Hey guys, welcome back. Sorry we're getting into this one quick. I forgot to hit the record button until 3 seconds before the poll. Okay, so we have a Waycrest 24 for you. As always, I'll leave my essences, my azerite, my all that stuff in the description below. Okay, so this first poll, just a bunch of soul essences. They cast an individually targeted spell called Scar Soul. On a 24, it does about half my health. So it's pretty important that you interrupt them. You can stun everything here. You can, like, blinding light. All that stuff works. I'm pretty sure fear even works. Although, test it in an M0 before you're going to do it in a big key because I'm not positive. But yeah, so basically this pull is typical pull. You just dot everything up. There's definitely more than 3 targets here, so you want to Mind Seer instead of Mind Flay. Unfortunately, our healer does go down, but it's not a huge deal because we're right next to the entrance, so... Okay, this guy is the fear guy, so I'm gonna mass the spell, except I'm out of mana, so I can't. So I do it as soon as I can, and I get one of them, me and one other guy, so not a ton of value out of that. Something that I need to get better at is tracking how much mana I have for my mass the spell and when I can't use it versus when I can. Because our tank asked right there, mass the spell, and I said yeah, but then I was like, oh crap, I actually can't because I don't have mana. So then our healer was like, oh crap, now I have to dispel somebody. She dispels someone. Everybody else is freaking out because now they're like, oh, I can't rely on the mass spell coming. And then I end up actually mass dispelling. Just a little late. Something I should mention with this next pack that's about to come up, something that you want to do, especially on the higher fortified weeks, is mind control the acolyte in the middle of these toads, and just hit her with the mind control, and then have the toads kill her, because they kill her faster than you guys can, and it makes this pack way easier if you don't have an acolyte. Those blighted licks do a ton of damage to her. We end up not doing it because we haven't practiced it, and I want to make sure we do it right when we do it. So that's that. Something that you can do in this room, which we end up doing, is you can just pull one of the 2 sides. You don't have to pull them both. They don't get pulled with the boss or anything. And the room's pretty big. So if you pull just one side, you have still enough room to move around and everything to avoid that pack over there. But you need to be very careful because I've seen many runs die really quickly because somebody body pulls that, and it's like a bolstering week or something, so we get like 6 stacks of bolstering on the boss, and that's just no good. Something I should mention, this Selena chick, she'll cast that soul manipulation, so you want to make sure you're all stacked in melee so that they can burn you down as fast as possible if it goes on you. Before she casts that, you want to make sure you cast, if you're running Psychic Horror, which I do most of the time, almost every time in here. If you're running that, make sure you cast it on the boss so that you don't accidentally cast it on one of your teammates when you get mind controlled. Also, Psychic Scream, you want to use that on the bosses, not so that it doesn't go off when you're mind controlled. Because if you're mind controlled, you can Psychic Scream your whole team away, and that's 5 seconds or something, where you're just you lose a ton of time on the boss and a ton of DPS. So there's also some people like to pop Dispersion on before Selena so that it's easier to kill us when we do get the soul manipulation or whatever, so that we don't pop Dispersion while we're mind controlled and take 75% reduced damage. But I think it's way better to save it for the Jagged Nettles from this other chick. Like right now I've got the Jagged Nettles on me. We made a mistake here where on that first Jagged Nettles, I popped Dispersion, and then our healer bopped me, so we stacked defensives. We just needed to do one of those 2. It didn't matter which we did, because if I pop Dispersion, it stays on you. The Jagged Nettles dot stays on you until you get healed above like 90% health or something. So if I pop Dispersion, then the initial hit doesn't do much, and the ticks aren't doing enough, and our healer can get you back up over 90% HP fast enough. Or Bop will just completely negate the mechanic so that you don't have to do any of that, But if you should only do one, because if you do both, that's a waste. Right here, I've died twice. Because we stacked Bop and Dispersion on that first Jagged Nettles, and then I got another Jagged Nettles later, and I didn't have anything for it, so I just ended up dying to it. I got B-Res, but then I got a bunch of Bramble Bolts on me from the Briar Lady. I ended up going down. Also, our Mage has died now, so this is looking really bad. Like, if you look at our DPS, it's like complete garbage. So in the ideal world, for an ideal pull for this, you want to, like I said, get rid of all your CC abilities before you get mind controlled, so that you don't CC your team on accident. And then, move when you have to move on that second boss, and then have some kind of defensive either from you or from your healer or whatever for any Jagged Nettles that are going to go out, because they're super dangerous. But that's basically that whole boss. We just did it really horribly. Okay, so then we go into this next hole in the hallway. Because this is a quaking and teaming week, it lends itself to chain pulling really well. So, like, there's no on-death affixes, so it's fine to pull a group, and then when the deadly things die, you can pull the next group and everything. And that's really, really good for Shadow Priest. So if you have the opportunity to ask your tank to do that more often, first off, it's more efficient as long as everybody survives, because there's less time between pulls. So it's, more time that you're actually doing damage, and you get a lower timer because of that. More likely to time the key and everything. But sometimes, like if you're playing with an assassination rogue, they really want to drop combat between every pull so that they can get a lot of resets and everything on their abilities. So you want to obviously communicate with your group that, hey, it's better for me if we chain pull. So if that's possible, then let's do it, right? A lot of the times, especially for me, I play with a fire mage pretty much all the time, and there are a lot of the times where he needs to wait 30 seconds or 15 seconds or whatever to get his combust back up for a big pull, and I really get screwed when that happens, because the reason we want to chain pull is because when you drop out of void form, like right now I have 39 stacks. When you drop out of void form, you get Chorus of Insanity stacks if you're running the typical 2 chorus or 3 chorus, even 1 chorus build. You have a lot of chorus stacks, which means you have a lot of crit, which means you're going to generate a lot of apparitions, and it also means all your abilities are going to crit. So if you are running the typical 3 spiteful apparitions, or 2 spiteful apparitions even, then the more ghosts the better, obviously, and the higher the crit the better. So you want to make sure that you are maintaining high stacks of void form and then high stacks of chorus of Insanity stacks as much as possible, and when there's downtime between pulls, your Chorus of Insanity stacks drop and you don't get more until a while later, and it's just not good. So that's why you want to chain pull as much as you can as a Shadow Priest, or with a Shadow Priest in the party. So right there are tank drops. So right now we're getting food buffs. So we have some fish feasts for verse for the people who are wearing verse amps. I'm just eating my big mechs for my crit food. Those vine twisters, which are the witches, can be pretty dangerous. So you want to make sure that you guys are interrupting all of those things. I would recommend, I haven't said this ever because I thought it was general knowledge, but I guess it isn't. There's an add-on called Mythic Dungeon Tools that is like a lifesaver. So if you're going into a dungeon, you want to plan a route for a dungeon, and you have no idea like what abilities are important to interrupt from the mobs, or what a certain mob does, or any of that stuff. Mythic Dungeon Tools has that all. So it's made by one of the ex-members of Method, who is now an Echo, I'm sure. And it's just, like, pretty much everybody uses it. It's super awesome. Really, there's no point not using it, because it has so much info in there that's so helpful. it'll tell you exactly what percentage every mob gives. So you can click on different polls and be like, okay, I want to pull this, and then this, and then this. Is that enough percent? And it'll tell you, and then you can be like, okay, maybe I'll pull this. And you can plan where you want to put obelisks. You can draw on it. I mean, it's basically like a football coach's whiteboard. You know how in like a football movie, the coach is like, okay, you're going to go here, and you're going to go here, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what the Mythic Dungeon Tools add-on does. It's just a map of the whole dungeon. Has all the mobs that are in the dungeon. It has all their abilities and everything, what percentage they give, all the boss abilities, everything. And it just lets you plan out what you're going to do in the dungeon. Super helpful. I definitely recommend that if you don't have it, or if your group isn't using it for some reason, look into it, because it's a life changer. Pretty much everybody uses it. So definitely all the people who are pushing the highest keys use it. Okay, so I have missed several of these polls, but basically the trash out here aren't crazy deadly. The Thorn Guards will cast, maybe it's the other guy, but one of these people out here will cast Infected Thorn. That's a disease, and it's also interruptible. So if the infected, you want to interrupt it if you can, but if you can't, then the Infected Thorn will leave a dot on somebody, and it's because it's a disease, you can dispel it. So keep that in mind. I'm running with a paladin, so she could dispel it, but if I dispel it, it's 1 GCD for me, and she can spend that GCD healing, and I lose not a ton, because 1 GCD from a Shadow Priest is not a huge loss of damage, because none of our abilities hit particularly hard. And a lot of our damage is kind of passive, because if you're running the 3 Spiteful Apparitions build, then the majority of your damage comes from your ghosts hitting people, and your ghosts are completely passive, right? If your Shadowward Pain crits, then your ghost goes out and hits it. So all you have to do, really, to do decent damage as a Shadow Priest, as long as you have high enough crit and you're running the 3 Spiteful build, is you just dot everything. And then, like, right now, you can see how many ghosts are coming out of me. All of that damage that they're doing is completely passive. I'm not doing anything there, other than keeping my dots up. So, like, it's super helpful, because if a poll is really wonky and you're freaking out trying to make sure you're doing the right thing, you're going to have a better baseline than somebody. So, like, if you're not touching any buttons, you're still doing more damage than, like, a different class who's not touching any buttons, other than maybe, like, another dot class or a fire mage or something with a really high ignite or whatever. So that's something to keep in mind. The reason the fire mage and I are standing up on this this fountain is because the gorgers in these packs that are coming up, this pack and another pack, they'll jump to people, but if you're standing up on this fountain, then they have no path available, and they'll try to jump to you, and they'll just never jump. So it's kind of like in Ataldazar, standing in the safe spots from the Juggernauts so that they never dash. Basically the same thing, but with gorgers, you stand up there. It's a little tricky to get up there. You have to have some pretty sweet parkour skills, but you know, it's not super hard. Just jump up there, and then you just need one person up there, by the way. Me and the fire mage were both standing up there, just because it also means that you're not going to get hit by any frontals or any AoE on the ground or anything. And I like standing up there anyway, but it's not necessary. You just need one person up there. If you're running an all melee group, then I mean, tough luck, because nobody can stand up there really. I would suggest, if you're running 3 melee DPS, bring a ranged healer who can stand up there, like a Resto Druid or something. But really, I would suggest every group pretty much should have a fire mage. So put your fire mage up there. Same within Ataldazar, put your fire mage in all those safe spots. Okay, so for this this boss, a couple big things that he does. He casts that crush ability, which is just straight up tank damage. It gets worse and worse over time, does more damage. Eventually, unless your tank is super strong or your DPS is good enough, eventually it becomes unbearable for the tank. The tank is just going to die, get one shot by it. But the way to prevent that is to walk the boss through those fires that spawn when the lightning hits the ground. If you walk through the fire, then it clears all his stacks that you can see. He's at 17 right now. Now he's up to 18 if you look at his nameplate. Now he's at 19. If you walk him through the fire, it clears all of those stacks, but he also does this really big AoE fire ability that can do a ton of damage. So you want to time your clears with some healing cooldowns. So like that's a great time to pop VE, great time to use your defensives, so power word shields and dispersion, all that jazz. But you should talk to your healer about it and figure out, what's going to be best for your group. So on a high enough key, you're going to get 2, maybe even 3 of those fire phases, and you want to make sure that you have something for every one of them. Like even if you're just popping your warlock cookie and your health pot for one, that can be enough. So right here, I'm dotting up all of these growths, not just because if anybody dies and they need to come down in here, it's helpful if they don't have any growths to walk through, they can walk faster, but also because it increases your single target DPS. So every apparition that hits a target will generate 3 insanity. So if you're just hitting one target, then you're getting less insanity generation than if you dot a bunch of targets like this. So like in Freehold especially, people will say, oh, you're such a patter because you dotted the training dummies. But honestly, it's a straight up single target DPS increase. Now, is it a huge single target DPS increase? No. But it is an increase. So it could be the difference between like a 40 stack void form and a 50 stack void form, for instance, depending on how many crits you're getting and how many targets you have. So if people are giving you crap for that, I should mention, in the case of Freehold and like those growths and everything, your single target abilities, so Shadow Word Void, Void Bolt, Mind Seer, Mind Flay, all that stuff, should be going on your priority target, which in that case was the mini boss. So don't be shooting your Void Bolts into the growths or anything, just dot them. Because if you're shooting your Void Bolts into the growth, then yes, that is padding, because it's not helping at all. It's just killing, it's actually hurting you to do that. Because first off, it's making the other guy, the guy who's really dangerous, take more time, and it's making your passive insanity generation, a target, die faster, which means you're not going to be able to passively generate insanity anymore. So make sure all of your single target abilities are going into the priority, and then you can dot other crap as you wish. For the most part. There are situations where it's probably not worth your time, because it takes GCDs to cast your abilities. So, and it's especially at super high levels of haste, where you're getting a Void Bolt every other GCD. If you're spending GCDs redotting things that are just giving you more insanity gen, a lot of the times you're better off just casting your Void Bolt as much as you can, and it's not worth it. So, at levels of haste over 200% or something, there's an argument there. That's more for the theory crafters. I'd be willing to talk more about it, but I don't think it fits so well in the scope of this video. But I'm kind of rambling, so. Okay, so this next poll, you have a bunch of infected peasants and everything. Oh, I should mention, if you do want to know that kind of stuff, like those really more theoretical situations and all that, follow me on Twitch, because when I'm streaming on Twitch, I will gladly talk about this stuff at length. Or you can send me a message on Discord or anything. I can leave my Discord in the description below. I'll just leave my username. You guys can add me, send me messages or whatever, and I'll feel free to answer your questions. But yeah, okay, so these Pallid Gorgers are the guys who jump. They leave a really nasty dot, so we came back up on this fountain for them. Those infected peasants will infest other mobs, which means that if a mob is infested, which is interruptible by the way, if you interrupt infest, then it doesn't happen. But if it goes off and a mob gets infested, then when it dies, it'll spawn 3 maggots, and the maggots cast an ability called Spit, and Spit hurts really bad. So you want to interrupt. Plus, it takes time to kill the maggots, and they don't give percent, I don't think. So it's not worth. You just want to stop every infest if you can. If you can't, it's not a huge deal, but try. Okay, because this is a fortified week, and also there are no on-death affixes, we're pulling a big pack onto the boss. So nothing in this pack is incredibly dangerous, which means we're not like focusing super hard on gouging and between the eyes and stun and everything on locking down targets. So we can just focus on the boss and cleave onto these ads. Because if we were to do this in 2 separate pulls, it's less efficient. It takes more time. If you can kill trash on top of a boss, then it's just a straight up time saver. So you want to do that as much as possible. On weeks like Sanguine, this is a horrible idea. Bolstering, horrible idea. On a week like Volcanic Bursting, good idea. Because nothing that you do to kill the enemies is going to make the boss harder to kill. On a week like Bolstering, you don't want to bolster a boss, obviously. On a week like Sanguine, there's the potential to drop Sanguine pools underneath the boss, and he just heals back up to full, and that's horrible. So on things like this week, Quaking, Bursting, Volcanic, all that stuff, those are teaming. Those are all really good affixes to pull stuff onto the boss. Fortified as well, because Tyrannical, the bosses are usually too dangerous to pull extra stuff onto them. Although if you can, and it's not too sketchy for your group, then by all means do it. But you want to be careful because, the bosses on Tyrannical can be really dangerous, especially the higher you go. So this boss will cast Call Servant. I try to give the servants a little bit of time so that they're not close to any other mobs before I dot them, because if you're really unlucky, you can dot a servant and then it'll body pull other trash, and then you'll accidentally pull trash in that you didn't want to pull. Right here, for some reason, we pulled like through the floor / the wall, which is just like a straight up bug. This isn't supposed to be able to happen. So this pull is way bigger than we were intending, and it's really sketchy because of that. So as you can see, I'm like almost dead. We've got spits going everywhere that do a ton of damage. We have a lot of infested mobs. So like that guy was infested. There's 2 more that are infested that are dropping more maggots. They're super dangerous. Our fire mage is getting aggro because he's popping so much combustion damage. All of this damage is causing all of our corruption to go off more often. So this is just one of those situations where there's nothing we could have done differently. We just got unlucky and the game bugged. This happens all the time in Tol Dagor. In Tol Dagor, the walls are paper thin, the floor is paper thin, there are mobs everywhere. So it's like probably 20% of the time in Tol Dagor, you're going to accidentally pull mobs through the wall or whatever. And in Waycrest Manor, there's some verticality to the dungeon. Like there's a floor beneath us with mobs on it, so you can potentially pull through the floor. It's just horrible. So keep in mind that this kind of thing is not impossible to happen, right? If you run this dungeon enough, that will happen, and it's easy to get frustrated and say, wow, Blizzard, fix your game. This has been out for 2 years now or something, right? You would expect that they would be able to fix something like this by then. But at the same time, complaining like that is not going to help. All it's going to do is make your mental worse, make your group's mental worse. It's going to just make things harder for everybody. So it's good to keep in mind that this stuff can and will happen. And when it does, you just say, man, that sucks. Hopefully it doesn't rip a huge key for you that you otherwise would have timed. But even if it does, that's just the way it goes. It's just unlucky. Now, there is something to say about giving feedback to Blizzard, for sure. Like posting bug reports and everything. That's a good idea, because hopefully if they get enough, they can fix this kind of thing. But just straight up complaining and yelling at your group, man, this is so lame, this dungeon sucks, this game sucks, it's not going to help anybody. So just keep in mind, that stuff can and will happen. It's just how it goes. Okay, so this next poll, we've got the Runic Disciple, which casts Ascension Ritual. Very important that you interrupt that, because if it goes off, it becomes this really scary other mob. Cast Spellbind, which is like a silence, basically like a Shadow Priest silence, that interrupts whatever you're casting, and it prevents any more casts. And then, so the Runic Disciple is the priority target in this, and then the guards aren't such a big deal. They don't really cast anything other than this Cleave, which is a frontal, that you'll never have to worry about that as long as you stay at ranged. But they don't really cast anything crazy deadly. You just want to, make sure you're watching for those frontals. Okay, so right here we're finally at a good enough percentage. You want to have I'm not sure what the number is on a teaming week, but on a non-teaming week, it's something like 87% or something before you go down to the third boss. So we got enough percentage right there so that we can take this obelisk down to the third boss. So what we're going to do with this blob is we activate it and then immediately run out of line of sight of the tentacles. And like in the freehold that I have on my channel from before, it just snaps all these tentacles down here, which makes them way easier to kill. So our mage will combust into the blob. I'm going to focus the majority of my damage into the blob. And then the ignite will spread to all the tentacles and just watch them drop. He's doing 200k, 250k DPS, It's just because he combusted into the blob, spread to all 4 tentacles, and now they just completely melt. So we're going to skip all this trash in here. It's super dangerous. It doesn't give great count. There's no point in doing it. If you can skip it, you can shroud through that stuff. You can use this obelisk to skip it. Pretty much everybody will skip the majority of that trash down there. We're going to take this down to the second to last boss room, and then the plan in here was to pull the entire room and then leave the last witch in the corner to pull her onto the boss. I'm not sure if that happened though. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So we pulled the entire room all at the same time. You can split this into a couple different pulls if you need to. The soul charmers are pretty dangerous. Those scar souls going off are pretty dangerous. That soul volley from the soul charmer is really dangerous. You can see how much damage I just took. This is a good time to pop Vampiric Embrace. There's a lot of targets. You're going to get a lot of passive healing from your apparitions going out. There's a lot of damage going out, so it's good to be, doing extra healing. I'm getting 2 I'm getting 2 Scar Souls at the same time, and it nearly kills me. On a higher key, like a 27 or something, it probably would kill me. There's one more mob in the back on the right that we haven't pulled yet. Because, like I said before, the plan is to pull her right as everything else is dying, and then pull the boss. Okay, so key things to keep in mind for Lord and Lady Waycrest. First off, Lord Waycrest will cast this virulent pathogen on a player. It's a disease, so you can dispel it. However, pretty much it's a healer mechanic, so the healers are going to be taking care of it. But you can help out your healer, and if you're in a coordinated group, your healer you can talk about it. But the way I handle it is I like to stand far enough away that no one's ever going to be in my circle, because when you dispel it, whoever's standing close to that person is going to get another instance of it, and then it's just going to keep spreading and spreading and spreading, and you don't want that. So I like to stand far enough away that no one's going to be in my circle, and then because it's a disease, I dispel it as soon as it hits me. So I'm watching his nameplate, and when it says my name, and he's casting that ability, I wait, it hits me, boom, instantly dispelled. That way our healer doesn't have to worry about dispelling me, they don't have to worry about healing me through the dot. It's no big deal. It does leave a big circle on the ground that you need to run out of, so keep that in mind. Stand far away, dispel it, run away. And then if you're going to try and dispel other people, make sure you talk with your healer about it and figure out, when are you going to dispel them, who is going to be dispelled. Make sure everybody knows that. Make sure you communicate it, basically. Because that's the biggest thing that wipes keys, in my opinion, is just a lack of communication. So somebody misses a kick because somebody was like, oh, I've got star, you've got triangle, and then the things swap on accident or something, or you stack defensives like we did on the very first boss in here. You know, whatever it is, make sure you're communicating. Lady Waycrest will cast the racking chord while she's over there playing the organ. That's just a dance, so it's just going to be a bunch of circles on the ground. It takes a second for the projectile to actually get there, so you can just move out of the way. You can finish like your cast or whatever, and then move. And then when she comes down, we kill Lord Waycrest first. I don't know if it's super important that you kill him first. It's just usually the way it ends up because we've been focusing him the whole time, so it's easier that way. You want to make sure that you're interrupting those racking chords when she's down here. But other than that, I mean, this fight's not super deadly, nothing too crazy. You know, just straight up interrupt the boss, make sure you're getting those debuffs dispelled. And then, okay, so right here, our healer she got a knock at the door or something, so she had to AFK. So what we want to do on this pull is have everybody stand up, or at least have the ranged stand up here, because those gloom horrors will jump to players, and if you're standing up here, then it does the same thing as with the Gorgers or with the Talazar guys. They just will never jump. So you want to make sure that pretty much everybody, all ranged, should be up here. I pulled her up there because I think there's other ways to get them to not jump on you. If you're standing in melee or something, I think that's probably it. If you're standing in melee, they won't jump to you. Not 100% certain, but there's something like that. So because she was AFK, I pulled her up here, and then as soon as she got back, she just ran back in. She's totally fine. Now, something that you may be tempted to do is, oh, look, they're almost all dead, so I'm going to jump down and beam. However, if they haven't cast their jumps, they will jump like immediately as soon as you get off the ledge. So don't risk it. You can beam them from on the ledge. It still hits them. Just make sure they're all dead before you jump down, or it's like pretty high chance that you're just going to drop dead. Okay, so now we're past everything. We're done with all the trash. We're at 98% because we're pulling the spider on top of this last boss. We're getting our food buffs and everything. Then what we're going to do here is, because we have 2 ranged, and we have the spider on the last boss, which needs a lot of interrupts, we're going to tank him in the corner so that we can use this wall on the left to line of sight the spider. So our tank is going to get every single interrupt on the boss, and then we're going to rotate interrupts on the spider. And so like this one's on me, I line of sight it, I run back out, take no damage, no big deal. So right here, you want to kill the mini boss first. So like, because we're running out of kicks, we want to kill the spider ASAP. And then when you're just fighting the boss regularly, you want to focus down the ads, and then your healer should be the one burning the ads with the flame thing that comes out. You can see it on the ground on the left. Our healer just ran over and grabbed it. Those death-touched slavers will cast an ability called like Focus, Death Focus, or something like that, where it'll choose a target and then it'll stun them as soon as the cast goes off. Death Lens, it's that. And you can stun it with your Psychic Horror. You can grip it as a DK, all that stuff. So make sure you're getting interrupts and things on those, like stuns, fears, whatever. You can see right there, I grabbed the fire and I burned it because I was closer. Things had just died. Our healer, it's easier if I just grab it and burn it, but our healer ran back to get it anyway because I didn't communicate that well enough. So you want to make sure you interrupt every single darkened lightning, and then this boss is just a joke. You just focus down the slavers, make sure you CC the Death Lens, make sure you interrupt that, and then make sure so the Dread Essence that he casts will revive any slavers that haven't been burned. So you need to make sure you're burning them as soon as you kill them. But yeah, other than that, this boss is not a hard fight. So just dot everything up, focus, target the boss, and then just do your rotation. There are some snap spots in this room where a DPS can stand and the slavers will never jump to anybody, which can save you from a pretty significant amount of damage on a hierarchy. But I'm not sure where they are. I'm sure there's... if you watch Gingy, he's an ex-Method player, now Echo. He's like one of the top M+ players. If you watch him, he does that a lot, and you can figure out more. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. But other than that, that's our Waycrest 24 for you. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. Let me know any feedback you have. And thanks for watching.